from a work in progress, a memoir that I'm writing based on my girlhood journals about my years in downtown New York City in the early 1960s. So we're going in the Wayback Machine. New York City, winter, downtown, 1964. Between my mom's psycho boyfriend looking to kill me and the FBI wanting to talk to me about that homicide on the Upper West Side, it seemed a good move for me to stay off the streets for a while. Now here I am holed up at Jeff's. He goes to work every day and then I'm stuck all alone with no TV and the same 40 books that every other Lower East Side would-be cool cat has. And I can list them by heart. There's Conte l'Entrement and his Les Chants de Mal de Mort, Kerouac's Shit-Faced Drunk on the Stupid Boring Fucking Road, Diary of a Cocksucking Opium Eater, and the Tibetan Book of the Boring Dead-Ass Motherfuckers. I don't fuck Jeff, but I give him a blowjob and jerk him off from time to time, so he is content for me to hang around. Last week, in desperation, I begged him to cop some speed for me because with speed I can tolerate anything. Well, almost anything. The last pad I was in got busted, and I tore out of there with only the clothes on my back, so Jeff has been letting me wear his. I have to roll up the pant cuffs and shirt sleeves, but with a tie and a vest, I think I look dapper. The underwear fit funny, though, with that cock pocket up front. Clean drawers are clean drawers, though, so I'm stuck with these until I can get out and steal some. After all this time not going outside, I'm finally getting stir-crazy. So I was really, really happy when Jan stopped over for a visit. Janet Kerouac and I, we lived together over on 6th Street with her mom last winter. Now she's catching me up on what's been happening in her life. Jan is wild for doing acid and can't believe I haven't done any yet. But, just the way people go on about it, I'm quite sure I won't like it. They take on this earnest religious tone and start ranting about consciousness. But with their glazed eyes and solemn tones, they look about as conscious as a fucking turnip. She has insisted, though, that I have to try it. Also, she learned how to make spaghetti. So she's coming over that night with some people, and then we're all going to take acid and make spaghetti and eat it. Maybe we should make the spaghetti first and then take the acid, I suggested. Nah, she disagreed. Takes an hour or more for the acid to come on. We'll have plenty of time to do the food. By 10 that night, we're all writhing around on the floor of Jeff's pad, and the place is covered in spaghetti noodles and red sauce. They had set a blanket on the floor, like a picnic, and we sat down to the meal totally fucked up while gleaming silver psychedelic beams of light sprang shooting out from all of our orifices, and then from the eyes, love rays. Jen ripped her splattered clothes off and rolled naked across the blanket, spilling the bowl of sauce in her travels. We picked spaghetti up and started dipping it in the sauce and hurling it everywhere. The walls, floors, windows were covered in red, wriggling spaghettis, and soon so are we. Everyone slithers and rolls across the floor like the first reptiles emerging from the primordial ooze, except it's a bright blood-red goo and crawling alive with spaghetti worms. With all the naked bodies, the guys now have hard-ons, so the girls get to take care of that. It's like doing the damn dishes. Now, I love to fuck, but I'm not that big on orgies. All those cocks, balls, pussies, mouths, lips, tits. So much going on, it's more like work, So after the fucking, it was time for a group shower. Everyone jammed into the tub at the same time. We were a squirmy, tangly mass of naked bodies slathered with spaghetti, and I looked down and I saw the red water swirling in the drain, and it looked like Psycho, except in color. But there were too many people to get the fear, so I just started laughing because really people with their clothes off look ridiculous for the most part. Then someone suggested we go out for a drive. Who the fuck has a car in New York City? I throw on Jeff's green army field jacket and a sweater underneath. Janet's fucking with the two guys still, so we leave her to that, and off we go out into the freezing winter night. The steam from our breath unfolded up to the night sky, and I became entranced by the patterns of our breath, and also stunned suddenly with the reality that I am alive. That these twisting spirals of breath are the visual representations of my very existence. I am so high at this point, I don't even realize that I am high. All this is actually making sense to me. Even worse, I fear some of the dreary books would make sense now too, though I am still of the opinion that it is much better to do drugs than to read about them. Then I pass through yet another door of seeing and being, and now, as messed up as I am also entirely, instantly lucid, standing outside, watching myself and knowing the true truth. And now the words true truth blaze up into the sky, and suddenly I am 3 years old, on the beach in Rhode Island, watching the sunset over the West Bay. In a single moment at age 3, I had a revelation that has always stayed with me. Standing on the beach, I knew that almost everything around me was a lie. The houses and cars and husbands and wives and businesses and churches, all lies. Well, maybe not lies specifically, but they were not actual, not substantial. I knew then that the substantial thing was an awareness, like this one I was having at that instant. I was an entity that knew and saw what was real, and maybe somewhere there were others too. Our car parked beside the icy cold winter beach. Pre-dawn was just now etching the faintest glimmer at the horizon. Above us was a bare, thick-limbed tree, jet black in silhouette under the barely just light ink-washed sky. My gaze probed the bark and each twig and sleeping bud of the tree with newborn eyes. Wow, I thought, I'm really fucking stoned. I turn back and contemplate land from this vantage point. I see the dark mass of land. I feel the sleeping dreamings of millions on the verge of waking to another day of dreary disappointment. Behind me, the sea catches some light and gleams silver in a huge fishy wave all the way to, where? England? Iceland? I don't know where this land is facing. I don't know where I am. But back into the car and off once more, driving until we land finally on a suburban tree-lined street. We are now in Queens, I am told. Queens. We trudge up a long indoor stairway, knock and wait for the door to open. I know it's very early, but we are speed freaks, and it is possible to find others like us, up all night and craving an interruption from the inevitable come-down, crash and burn of morning. We troop into a small living room and each find a spot. There are 2 front low windows, and I pick a space on the floor by one. A handsome man in a belted terry cloth robe enters the room, strides to the center, and turns to survey us. He smiles broadly, and when his gaze reaches me, it lights and beams even broader. Bibbe! It is Ronnie fucking Fontaine, the most gorgeous guy ever. I was strung out on him all last winter, but he never looked at me. Haven't seen him in months, but this fabulous-looking girl thing in a shorty kimono is probably the reason for him being here in Queens. The car guy brings out a pipe and some dope. Another guy whips out a speed packet, and a contingent moves off to the bathroom to shoot speed. I follow along behind and beg a little taste, and I'm provided with a wet pinky dip into the beautiful white powder of searing eternal awakening. This little taste boosts me back up into the stratosphere. At the same time, it tweaks the acid. A hit from the boo pipe, and I am gliding on the middle plane just above Earth, neither into the stratosphere beyond reason or caution, nor crawling through the dark subterranean headspaces, but just floating alongside the time continuum. To all casual glances, one would seem to be in lockstep with the rest, when in fact this is entirely illusory, and one merely glides along in a large crowd at approximately the same altitude, or rather lack of it. I have the thought that this works for me because I am short. In a crowd, I can be a foot off the ground, but still be seen as average height, walking on concrete and mud with the rest. See, that's the thing with these longer stretches. You start coming up with all manner of insane, demented, speed freak ideas. Back at my window, I watched two little kids playing across the street. A little girl, about 12, and a boy, around 8. The little girl has made a hopscotch with chalk on the sidewalk and is showing the little guy how to play. It makes me smile to see them bundled up in winter clothes playing a summer game. She must really love it, I think. And then before I know what I'm doing, I'm taking the stairs 2 at a time, buttoning up my jacket as I go. My hair is probably a mess, so I pull up the hood on the field jacket and tie it under my chin as I cross the street and greet the little girl. "Can I play?" I ask. She beams and hands me the marker. I throw down at 1 and jump the grid perfectly. The movement shakes the speed into my system and I feel awake and happy. The girl was Tina, the boy was her little brother Jimmy. I helped Jimmy play hopscotch. He had on big galoshes and wasn't able to jump nimbly, so I invented the toe touchdown rule just for him while we girls played it regular. I was about to win the round, but I realized it wouldn't really be fair. After all, I was a year older than her. I intentionally bobbled and stepped on a line to give her the win. Then it was tag. No faking there. I've always been lousy at tag. Tina and Jimmy's mother came out to the street to check on them and met me. I thought she might notice my odd clothes, but she didn't seem to. Instead, she invited me in for snacks. Mom appears carrying 3 small dishes and a platter with a large chocolate cake on it. Who eats chocolate cake at 9 in the morning? I didn't know, but I wondered if this woman would adopt me. Was chocolate cake at 9 a.m. worth a stifled life of unending boredom? Probably not. We sat on the floor eating cake, watching cartoons, and after a few, I made my excuses, said my mother must be missing me by now, and left, promising to return. Back across the street, they were in advanced stages of paranoid hysteria, just on the verge of flushing their stashes. Dope fiends are so unstable. They were freaked out because I was playing with the kids. It fucks them up, see, because I'm a kid, but I'm one of the freaks too. Ronnie lectured me on how the streets are no good for me and I ought to be playing in some nice neighborhood for real and going to school and Saturday afternoon matinees. Yeah, okay, I say. Instead, I'm getting high and giving blowjobs on the Lower East Side. So fucking what? Now they surround me, jabbering, scolding, really getting on me. See, my pop, my dad put a big ad in the Village Voice newspaper for me, big black letters, Bibbe. It said for me to give it up, to get off the streets, to call them. There was a phone number. People have been telling me about it for a couple of days. Now these guys are hassling me to call. Okay, I say, find me the number and I'll call. Someone went out to the nearest newsstand to get the paper while I lay down on the bed in the dark to rest my eyes. Under my eyelids, I played with little kids and laughed and giggled until the guy came back from the newsstand empty-handed. It's fucking Queens, no Village Voice here. So we began calling everyone anyone knows, and eventually someone had the number, and I called, and my father, Al, answered. He's working today, but he tells me to meet him tonight on the corner by his new place, and he gives me the directions. Ronnie's going into the city to work, and Jeff and I take the subway in with him. Then I have no money or tokens, but I jump the stile, and we all ride the train in from Queens in silence. Jeff and I crawled out of the subway at Houston and trekked north and east to his pad on 11th Street, where we did more speed and talked out, meticulously analyzing the potential of the Mobius strip as regards its application to practical time travel. This necessitated cutting out and manufacturing Mobius strips from scrap paper and tape. While Jeff filled half this notebook with mathematical equations he said proved our theory. In our excitement, the hours melted away, and suddenly it was time for me to meet my father. I fished around in my pocket for the slip of paper I'd written the address on. It was between Broadway and Lafayette, in that no man's land between East and West Village. Past vacant factory buildings and deserted streets, I trudged west and south in the rusty gray winter sunset into the twilight shadows of Great Jones Street. I only waited 5 minutes. Pop arrived, cold as dry ice. I felt raw and burning. Whatever emotional skin I had left on was ripped off. Sergeant Goodson? Yeah, this is Al Hansen. Case number 5793930. My daughter just walked in. What do I do with her now? Yeah? You listened to the voice on the other end. Okay. He hung up the phone and announced calmly that they wanted to see me over at the precinct. See, when you didn't show up at school, they came and hassled me, said to produce you, or they would take me in for child endangerment. I ain't fucking going to jail, so I guess that means you are. 6 months, 4 beatings, 2 girlfriends later. A family court judge granted me my freedom and released me into my father's custody. I got out of jail on a Friday. On Saturday, I did all the uptown galleries with Al and ended up at the Stark's restaurant on 79th and Madison. Al's pals were at the big back table, and we joined them. Ivan Karp, Andy Warhol, Gerard Malanga, Chuck Wine, Roy Lichtenstein. Pop was broke, so Roy bought us burgers. After months of youth house food, it tasted great. Those guys were all talking dull art guy stuff, and I was pretty bored until Andy Warhol leaned over the table, looked at me intently, and asked, "And what do you do?" Before I could answer, Al trumpeted proudly, "I just sprung her from jail." Jail? Oh, please, tell us about that, said Andy. I told him briefly about the 6 months, the 4 beatings, the 2 girlfriends, and some other incidental stuff. He clapped his hands in delight. We have to make a movie of that. Chuck and Andy said it together. Will you come to the factory and make a movie about being in jail? Asked Andy. Sure, I said. See, Pop put me in, but he got me out. He could be a prick, but he introduced me to Andy Warhol. And then again, if I hadn't been sent to Spofford Street and Moniva Street Youth House, I never would have made a movie based on my life called Prison with Edie Sedgwick and Andy Warhol. So I guess in the end, you get what you get. Thank you very much.